Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on episode 46 of Politically Conscious, we expose the real reason behind the government still being shut down. Chicago PD stood down as ICE agents were violently attacked in the city. We ask our political experts, is Trump's push to fulfill his immigration campaign's promises actually benefiting African Americans? If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us live on YouTube. This Saturday, come out to the historic Madu bookstore for my book signing, Re-Education of the Negro, read commentaries from the book, and mental chess box and battle me on social media with your thoughts, as we also pay tribute to the ancestor rest in power of Assata Shakur, as we call this Re-Education of the Negro beats Assata. See you on Saturday.
It's not about bloodshed or about going to the mountains and fighting. We will fight if we are forced to, but the fundamental goal of revolution must be peace.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 46 of Politically Conscious. We are popping up on you. I know we've been rocking on Friday, so hopefully this Thursday doesn't catch everybody off guard. But I got my man Emil Bryant, my right-hand man, political consultant, in here with me, as well as Leo Smith. We basically tackle political topics from the left and right. Emil representing the left, Leo representing the right. I try to moderate and give my 3 cents as well, as I like to say. As you know, this Politically Conscious is run under the umbrella of Mental Dialogue, as you see behind my head. With that said, Emil, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll get Leo's introduction and get started with our clips today.
Hey, everybody, Emil Bryant. Welcome to Politically Conscious, where we're here to unpack the propaganda, and that's what I ask my candidates to do when they call me. Tell the truth, tell it early, tell it often. The bad news never gets better with time. The people can handle reality, but you got to give it to them straight, no chaser. Then you can talk about solutions and spin. But first, facts. Always start with facts.
Leo, your input, and we're going to get to some cuts for anybody. We always, go ahead, brother. Yeah, go ahead and get your introduction, then I'll let them know how we run.
No. Leo Smith, former Republican National Committee strategist, former Georgia GOP executive, and really just a person who works on, with my company, Engaged Futures, Public Affairs and Government Relations, works on policy that manifests in a way to give us more liberty and freedom, self-reliance and independence. And so you learn more about me at Leo Smith Politics.
I love it. So let's get started with the preeminent issue still going on. We talked about this last week, but since it's still happening, let's talk about it. Our first clip, and we'll get y'all response to it.
In your headlines now, the U.S. government has officially been shut down for a week now, 7 days and counting. Lawmakers don't seem to be any closer to opening it back up. Fox's Rebecca Castor takes a look at what is keeping the lawmakers from striking a deal.
Motion upon reconsideration is not agreed to.
It's Groundhog Day on Capitol Hill with another round of failed Senate votes to reopen the government. The sticking point remains an extension to COVID-era Obamacare subsidies.
They know they're inflicting suffering on the American people so they can make some kind of point.
We're fighting for the American people. And it's not just one small group of American people that want this. It's across the board.
Neither side is budging, and tensions are flaring, with some lawmakers taking jabs at House Speaker Mike Johnson for using the shutdown as a reason to delay any movement on the Jeffrey Epstein case and not swearing in the new Democratic Congresswoman from Arizona.
Why are you blocking her then? I'm not blocking her.
With all due respect, you voted multiple times to keep the government shut down, okay? The Republican members from Arizona voted to keep the government open. So don't sit here and try to lecture us.
Get your people in and stop covering up for the pedophiles.
Nobody's covering up for pedophiles, so knock it the hell off.
Away from Capitol Hill, military members are worried they won't get their next paycheck on October 15th. And furloughed federal workers are concerned they may not get back pay after President Trump implied it's not guaranteed.
For the most part, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way.
White House lawyers are reportedly reviewing a 2019 Trump-signed law, which most believe guarantees back pay for all federal workers after a shutdown. The administration now disagrees. In Washington, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
A lot of stuff to report there. Emil, I'm going to let you, being our historian, political expert. I don't know. Is this the longest shutdown that we've experienced? You may know that answer. Not familiar, so that's why I'm asking you. But in your thoughts too, what's really keeping us shut down? So give us a time period, and what do you think is really keeping us shut down versus what they're spending us on?
Yeah. So first of all, this is a week, and it is devastating for people who are used to getting their paychecks and the services that they need on a regular basis. And I think that's part of the problem is that there are a bunch of services. For instance, the other day I was doing some research on the Federal Trade Commission because um, I'm looking at a merger between Chevron and Hess. And for those who don't know the oil industry, that is a monumental deal. And the Federal Trade Commission is literally shut down right now because of the shutdown. So you have agencies that deliver critical services to the nation that are not working right now. The longest shutdown was 35 days. That was a few years ago. Um, and the longest one before that was 21 days. So we've had this food fight before. And the problem with these food fights is that the longer you disrupt the federal government's operations, the more degraded the services are in coming back. So you have not only people whose lives are disrupted, you have people whose families and finances are disrupted, but you have services that are disrupted and continue to be disrupted even after the shutdown continues. You're not talking about a light switch that starts on and off. You're talking about people's lives and their livelihoods. The way they do business is fundamentally disrupted. The way the nation does business is fundamentally disrupted. For instance, right now you have air traffic controllers who are not on the job the way they should be, which is a danger to people. And we know at the beginning of this administration in January, we had 2 air incidents. So this is a critical point that we need to make. It's not just, oh, it's dollars or whatever. And in the case of this particular shutdown, the major food fight seems to be healthcare premiums. And the fact is that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act cut those premiums support from through Obamacare, through the Affordable Care Act, and the Republicans cut that out in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, whereas the Democrats are like, restore that and we can talk. They don't want to restore them. The Republicans don't want to restore them. So people's premiums are going to go up. And that's a big problem. But that disruption is part and parcel to this entire process of going through this political show called the shutdown.
So, Leo, if I could add, based on the conversation you and I had, I think Emil gave us a beautiful breakdown. But I think, based on what you told me, the sticking point between the Affordable Care Act is Democrats are actually holding their position on making it available to non-Americans. At least that's from something that you explained to me. You can go in details, but that's what I understood you to say to me. If I got that wrong, please correct me. But that's a sticking point that's not coming out publicly when they're throwing out their propaganda, in my opinion, if you're accurate on that.
No, I do think it's important to dispose of that early argument where both sides were preparing their messaging for a win, right? So if we know that Democrats keep saying that there's no health care for illegal immigrants, right? But Republicans were saying you're trying to give health and medical care to illegal immigrants. Democrats goes, we're not trying to give health care to illegal immigrants. You know what? Both of them are partially right in how they're presenting that. And we talked about this. As we get closer to the pain points, people not getting checks, etc., the real issue is coming to fore, which is the healthcare premium and subsidies for basic Americans, right? Emil, so that's what Emil just outlined, because that's the real issue. The political issue is it's a win for Republicans to make Democrats look like they only care about undocumented people getting services that America can't afford. That's hurting regular Americans. The truth is that undocumented immigrants do indeed, page 57, they do indeed get medical. Nobody should be denying this. If you go down to Grady Hospital in Atlanta and an undocumented illegal immigrant walks in, they're going to get some of your taxpayer money to get medical care. That is true. So for the Republicans to say that what the Dems are proposing is new is a lie. what Democrats are saying, well, it's not in the bill. That's a lie too. So let's just dispose of that. And now let's get to the real thing. And the real thing is the reason why Marjorie Taylor Greene, a far-right conservative Republican in the state of Georgia, you all know who she is starting to go, whoa, because she's got so.
Did he break up for you, Emil?
Gone off screen. She's got social levy, so paychecks are not being taken care of. I'm a native federal credit banker.
Leo, we lost you for a second. So I want to try to help.
Are you guys still receiving me? Because I went for a second.
Can hear you loud and clear, Leo.
You still delayed for me. So when if we get something,
do you guys still have me?
Yeah, I got you, Leo.
Your visuals delayed for me though, unfortunately. So can you come out and come back in, maybe? Because I want to definitely. I don't want it to be like that for the users because your vision, like I can hear you, but
yeah, he's frozen now for me too.
So hopefully he comes back out and come back in. I wanted to catch that Marjorie Taylor point because I think that was vital to this conversation.
Really
in the meantime, I'm gonna throw it back to you, Emil. This is what I think I hear Leo saying. If we're just again, we're cutting through the propaganda. That's what we do here. So what I think I hear him saying is the reality is that, as he said, if an illegal immigrant walks up to a particular hospital, especially in the sanctuary cities, especially if there's an emergency or whatever, they may receive services. At the end of the day, if they're not a citizen, then technically they're getting taxpayer dollars. What I think so that's a reality that in the middle of this shutdown, the Democrats politically would like to deny that truth. What I still think I hear Leo saying, I was hoping to have him here to kind of tell me if I'm correct on this. Like it's kind of always been a reality, but politically it gets overplayed how many people actually are getting those services. The reality is, again, yeah, they may walk into a hospital and get services upon an emergency, but it's not in a sense that they're getting services that we as Americans are not getting. That's how it gets played politically, as if it's that type of dichotomy, when in reality it's some of them do get services based on their willingness to come into a hospital, or maybe some, in some cities, some sanctuary cities, I think they go as far as the state itself allows them to sign up for state level services, if not federal services. I may be wrong on that, but correct me if I'm wrong, if I'll get this context correctly.
Yeah, it's a complex multi-part problem, Montoya. The first part is there's something called the Emergency Medical Care, EMTALA, Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, EMTALA. The EMTALA says that you will not be refused service. If you go to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, cms.gov, you can find exactly what three things every single place that receives Medicare dollars must do. And it's a simple three-part drop. And I say this because a lot of times people want to have complaints about this from the federal level. They're supposed to give you an appropriate medical screen, treat your condition until it's stable, and transfer you if necessary. That's what every single person in America is entitled to under the law. Not medical care, preventive care, but that's what they get if they come to an emergency room.
Gotcha.
On top of that, there are states that say, hey, it's to our fiscal interest to make sure every single person has some sort of preventive care available to them. Those states do not use federal dollars for that care. Right. So what the federal government is saying, the Republicans are saying, is even though you're using state dollars, we're backfilling your holes that you create by giving those services to those undocumented immigrants. And we don't want to even backfill you, even though those federal dollars are going to citizens. Well, here's the problem. It's more expensive for everyone involved if you don't do what some of these states are doing. And the states are recognizing that, and they're making a fiscal choice. Does it benefit the citizen? Absolutely. Why? Because now there's a more responsible use of all the dollars, and that care extends to everyone better. But to Leo's point, the spin on this, the propaganda on this, is that it's very clear line, boom, right, either this or that. And there's a bunch of gray that's not being discussed. And the gray is, what is in the best interest of the nation to progress? Is it purely for citizens, or do you acknowledge the fact that a outbreak among undocumented immigrants I'll just say it this way. Bacteria and viruses do not have passports. They do not care about citizenship, and they do not care who was born where. So it's in everyone's interest to keep all people as healthy as possible. But how we do that, that's a point of discussion and a point of order that we should have much more nuance than either this or that, either shutdown or no shutdown.
Yeah, either or is where they drive us to. You're not even seriously playing politics or doing politics if you are in an either or paradigm. That's the trick bag that we typically fall for. And because we fall for it is I'll talk about this a little later, why I think some of the politicians do what they do. We got one from Kenny, a comment from Kenny 77 says, so are they asking or wanting people to die based on paperwork? This is ridiculous. That's what they want, to dehumanize undocumented people, see their true colors. Any thoughts on what Kenny says?
So Kenny's not wrong, in my opinion, in that there's a whole bunch of people on both sides of the aisle, but I'll specifically speak to the Republican side, who are trying to demonize undocumented immigrants for a political purpose. And here's the problem with demonizing immigrants like that. You begin to allow inhumane treatment toward one group of people bleed over into inhumane treatment to all people. And so what Dr. King always told us was that this moral depravity is a slippery slope, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So we have to be really careful when we start seeing people demonizing, or in the case of what Kenny is saying, giving people a license to treat people inhumanely in order to make political points, score political points, or do anything that would smack of, oh, I'm better than you, which is what a lot of these politicians are trying to do right now.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because, matter of fact, let me see. Leo's trying to get back on here. I don't let him know. Leo, we can't see you. Can you speak? Because we might could just do it without your video today.
Maybe can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good.
Yeah,
sorry about that. I am in a different space, so we'll see if we can figure out the visual. But I was just listening to Emil share, and we're in a very, very strange place, guys. And I'm loving, in a way, the opportunity. The opportunity being that from the beginning of America, from Sojourner Truth to Frederick Douglass to Booker T. Washington to Malcolm X to Martin Luther King, and then that great debate between Malcolm X, especially the younger X, and the older Martin Luther King, and the more religious Western civilization focused Martin Luther King. There's a reason why I took a strategy of connecting with hunters, fishermen, wildlife enthusiasts, agrarians, when it came to growing Black engagement with the Republican Party back in 2013. And that is because I knew that people who had less fear of losing government's assistance and even government's civility would be more likely to have the independence. And y'all can argue with me all you want about what I'm about to say. But people who knew how to hunt, people who knew how to grow their own food, people who knew how to go and farm land and not need any government services. There's a reason why Black people tend to move and stay in urban areas, because they think there's more jobs, there's more benefits, there's more government services, etc. I think that's failing us. So as I watch government fall apart, trust in government fall apart, I also see opportunity. Yes, it's terrible. We're talking about white people's depravity. I'm saying in some ways you might want to leave them alone. Let them do what they're going to do. Make sure you know how to feed yourself. Make sure you know how to feed your family. Make sure you got somebody in your circle that has land that they own that they can go get on if you need to go get on it, so you can grow food, have some self-sustainability. All these folks talking about revolution and all this kind of stuff and blah, 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 Black power. If you ain't got the power to take care of your own self and you're worried about white people's depravity, I say you might be focusing wrong. And that's why I don't really think that we, as a Black American people, I kind of take some issue with some of Martin Luther King's, at least how people are interpreting, because that's not what Emil says. And Emil, we can talk about this. When you say, yeah, we can't just let people do horrible things to other people. Well, okay. Well, the truth is Martin Luther King pretty much only worked on Black issues. He might have had an ethos, a value system that was transcendent of just Black Americans, but he was looking at the case of Black Americans and saying, I need to focus on that. That's what he did in behavior. I'm more interested in people's behavior right now than I am in their rhetoric.
Leo, I'm not going to disagree with you. You can start at Ebenezer Baptist Church or Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and you can absolutely see from the roots of Dr. Vernon Johns where he came out of that. But by the time he got to the Poor People's Campaign, he saw common cause with many people around the nation. So the early Martin Luther King, I 100% agree with you. But in his latter days, he was absolutely just like, peace be upon him, Malcolm X. The brother was beginning to broaden his scope beyond just pure focus on Black American issues. And I'm not saying that focus wasn't there. What I'm saying is that the light, which was more laser-like, became a little bit more like a flashlight in that it had a little bit more diffusion and a little bit more coverage than what initially both men started with. But to your point about what power looks like the ability to control another people's sustenance, another people's survival. So in this nation, we're all subject to someone else's way of knowing and way of being, because none of us is 100% self-sufficient. And those of us who are in such a small minority that they're literally statistically irrelevant. But what can we do? This is what your point is to me. What I hear you say is, what of this can you control? What of this can you begin to grasp more power over in the chain of things that you can possibly control? Not so much to be completely self-sufficient, but to establish a line that says, I am not fully controlled by your ability to feed me, nourish me, water me, or perhaps even protect me. Those are things that we can bring more under our control. And I think we all, as Americans, especially as Black people in America, need to be more conscious of when we say, okay, I'm going to Costco because I'm trying to do this, or I'm going to grow my own food because I'm trying to do that. That's all true. I'm going to own my own home. Yet there's eminent domain. Yet there's still trucking issues. There's still all these other things. So to your point, we cannot remove ourselves completely out of all of this, but we can grasp control over some situations. And I think that's what Dr. King and what Malcolm were trying to get us all to see better, was that there's more control over our personal and familial situations than we give ourselves credit.
Yeah, and I would offer.
Yeah, thank you, Emil. And so the whole focus on the undocumented immigration issue, that's a fight for political messaging power, for moral virtue signaling. That's not about us.
Leo, can you hear me?
Do we?
Yeah. Let me. I'm gonna transition us into this conversation. I want to highlight, just because y'all said it, I want to bring some of the context with Dr. King. Since great dialogue, I want to add a little more context. So you're absolutely right about the earlier Dr. King. He still was very focused on our issues even at the end. However, Emil is correct, and so a lot of times people confuse the statement that he made to I think it was either
Abernathy.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Abernathy. It was either to the guy here in Atlanta, or I think it was the
Lunch.
The guy that used to fund him a lot. The Hollywood star, music star. Oh God. Anyway,
Belafonte.
Belafonte. I think it's the Belafonte. So where he highlights that he realizes, I think they were in a hotel either in LA or possibly Chicago at the time, but he highlights that he felt like he may have brought his people into a burning house. People love to highlight that quote. You got to have the context and have studied enough history. When you hear it just as that, you think King is saying integration in itself was the problem. what he was highlighting, and this is what kicked off the Poor People's Campaign, was after that conversation. What it was he realizes that although he had fought for dignity of African Americans, he realized even with the wins that we've gotten at that point, when he's having this realization, he realized I've got him there with no economics inside of a capitalistic society. So it wasn't that he was disagreeing with integration in itself. He realized I've integrated them. The burning house was the burning house of capitalism. And I'm not downing capitalism. It was just him realizing I haven't gotten them for enough along because we all pay tax money and not getting what we should get with this tax money. And the all is where he expanded it to the Poor People's Campaign. Because at that point, he realized the trick was I've been worried about us, but these other people are suffering the same thing due to how our government runs. That's what he says. I'm going to DC to get our check. The check was for us and others who are not getting appropriate benefits via their tax dollars. So I hear you when you say you love the opportunity, Leo. The reality is it ain't that Black people went to these areas that they're in now. That happened through redlining 30, 40 years ago. They're still stuck there, and there are not enough resources, or the jobs moved out and have left them there, and they're still paying their tax dollars. So with paying the tax dollars,
Go ahead. All right. So I love your deductive reasoning, because what you did was you talked about what you thought his thinking was transitioning into, but then you pointed out a behavior. And you said the behavior that he mentioned was that he was going to go to DC to get our check. And you used the word our. I don't think he was talking about illegal immigrants when he said that. When he said our.
Yeah, well, I'm not. I'm just talking about when he was saying, I was just saying that at that point he had already kicked off the Poor People's Campaign, and so it wasn't. I was just transitioning that's where he transitioned at that point. We're coming to get our check.
Because King and Coretta Scott King influencing him, and the other people influence him also, he was an assimilationist. And I'm saying that assimilation at all costs is not always beneficial.
Oh, I think we can all agree with that,
That's
Leo.
what I'm
And I
saying.
think that's
We're at that pivotal point right now.
I think, but this is kind of the discussion that I want to make sure that I have in this context is assimilation was never the goal. The goal was treatment,
never the goal.
Equal treatment under the law,
yeah,
and dignity and fairness under the law. And when Dr. King recognized that, he was like, look, what is the pathway to that? He will tell you along the way that integration looked like the best way to do that. That wasn't necessarily true, but that's what he thought the best way was. When what Montoya talks about, integrated people into my people into a burning house, it was that there was no other preparation in alongside the part where equal under the law mattered. So the burning house was, hey, you are now in a fire where you are not prepared or you're going to get burnt. What's the fire? The fire is that there's an entire economic engine that we were not a part of. We were fuel for that engine, but we were not the engine itself. And the problem was that we were going to integrate into that engine without any understanding of how it worked for our people.
Exactly.
And that is where
the question on healthcare.
Go ahead.
So the question on healthcare is, if we all agree, all three of us agree, and so for the audience and listeners, we're acknowledging, all three of us, that
agree
we're
on
part of and dependent on a larger engine, right? A big engine to get us from A to C. But we can sometimes get from A to B if we just realize that engine is going to fail us sometimes, and we need to have a way to get from A to B just on our own. Okay, and I think this is a clarion call to look for self-agency as much as you can, and that includes sometimes not fighting a fight that is controlled by the large engine and ain't got nothing to do with us. Okay, And I think we just need to have a little bit more focus on, like you said earlier, what engine can I use that's internal, locally controlled, etc., that can get me from the A to B. Now, if I can get the big engine to cooperate with me in a society, in a world where I'm not even the majority, I'm not even close to the majority, then great, but don't rely on it.
So I like what you're saying. Outside of, I think some of it is still built in propaganda. We've done an amazing job of doing A to B. That's never been our issue. I'll show you example after example after example of it. We've never had.
But Montoya, I want to tell you.
There's a political
I understand what you're saying, but right.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I want you to
see, but you made a huge. I agree that we've done some incredible things as Black people. Okay,
they still are
an amazing job. I mean, then if we've done an amazing job, everybody shut up and go fishing.
So, because you're stuck in the political narrative, and that's why you think the way you think. When you put it all together, like Emil said earlier, it's a very few unique people that can just do it outside of, hey, it's people with a bunch of money. If that road ain't paved, if the government in their area don't make a good decision to pave their road, you can have a nice house and your nice car can get towed up because you have to rely. Again, that's any area that you're in. So quite often, I think the mistake that the political narratives does, it makes us get into a either or. I feel like most of your argument is still a either or. It does not put both of those together. That's why I'm pushing back against the narrative that we can get to A to B on our own, as though we've never have done that or still are doing it. Or sometimes you're charging people to get to A to B and forgetting what was done prior to, and that still is a reason why they can't get A to B. You can't pull out and go to A to B if you're constantly being attacked. And that is still a reality that we don't like to accept in 2025, in my opinion.
I'm going to agree with you, Montoya. And this is the challenge that I think a lot of us forget. It's like there's an active, dynamic presence trying to defeat any progress we make. There's a phenomenon that's been studied to death called white backlash. This is a real phenomenon. We need to acknowledge it. Otherwise, 4 little girls in Birmingham wouldn't have been blown up if there was no thing called white backlash. Every time Black people in America tend to see themselves closer to what is called freedom or equality, then there tends to be a majority backlash against that. Sometimes it comes in the form of economics. Sometimes it comes in the form of politics. Sometimes it comes in the form of legal. Right now, you have a Supreme Court that seems to be very regressive, that's going against not only other precedents, but precedents that it made itself only a few years ago. So this context of going back and forth, it's often 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes it's 4 steps back. But overall, as Dr. King said, the moral arc of the universe tends toward or bends toward justice. That has been our story. We've been the engine. We've been pushing. And Leo, to your point about the larger engine versus smaller engine, we're not a numerical majority, but we are an incredibly powerful minority. How powerful are we? If we ever chose to disrupt this nation as a people, we could bring it to its knees overnight. A general strike of just Black people would literally paralyze this nation's economy. We don't think that way anymore. And the problem is 65 years ago, we did, and we had enormous political power because of it. Today, because we do not think that way, and there's been an engineered reason for that loss of thinking, we cannot wield that power as we could have back when in the 50s and early 60s. I'm not saying we don't have that power. What I'm saying is we don't have the mindset or the organization we did 65 years ago to say to the nation, we will paralyze you if you do not treat us with freedom and equality under the law. And that, to me, is the difference between how we got to where we are today, people being organized, using their power effectively, and where we are today, where we're much more diffuse, much more heterogeneous, much more or much less likely to see ourselves as the people who can influence things with such power as we had 60 years ago.
I'll say we could learn from that organization, that the organization of that time, Emil. I think, unfortunately, the burning house that King spoke of, the economic bringing this country to its knees economically, is not the case if you pay attention to what's happened with the numbers specifically collectively in our community. And I think that's the reality to the burning house that Dr. King spoke of. Economically, we're not in a position at this point, in my opinion, to do what you just said. The organization stuff, we still need to learn. Let us go to another cut. This brings it to the immigration conversation that you're having, Leo. In all reality, I agree 1,000% with you when it comes to immigration. Let's get into that conversation with this cut right here.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Can you confirm the reports that Chicago police were ordered to stand down when ICE agents were surrounded and rammed by cars? And do you want Chicago police not to help ICE agents?
Our police officers respond to every single emergency in this city. The brave women and men who sign up to serve and protect this city are committed to keeping us safe. And what we have made very clear is through our welcoming city ordinance, when it comes to civil immigration enforcement, absent a warrant, our police department will not dub as federal ICE agents. In fact, we believe it's antithetical to driving violence down in the city of Chicago. When people call 911, we do not ask what their immigration status is, right? And so our police department will respond to every incident in which their services are needed to keep people safe, protecting the fundamental right to be able to protest, ensuring the maximum safety of our residents. That is the top priority of our administration.
Can you confirm, though, were Chicago police told to stand down?
What I can confirm is that our police department responds to every single 911 call. When 911 is called and there's an emergency, our police department shows up, as they've always done.
So, Leo, I'll start with you here. We can see the propaganda there, not wanting to answer that question directly. Clearly, this is an issue with the troops being sent to Chicago first. I think Portland may have, y'all can correct me if Portland's already gotten troops, but I know that's a pushback from the Portland government, city of Portland as well, to Trump sending them there. But again, I'm just highlighting, obviously, we all keep having cuts from Brandon Johnson handling this immigration issue. So here's where I wanted to go, though, to ask the question, in addition to what's the propaganda in there. But the question I have is, as I listen to this issue, I think to our audience, the propaganda of immigration from both sides is done to pit us as the voters against one another. Whereas if we had a politician, in my opinion, being sensible about immigration, I think it would look something like this. And let me know what you think of this, Leo, and you as well, Emil. So I think if we're getting out of the politics of it, or who's right, or immigrants are this or immigrants are that, the reality is most Americans understand that there are particular jobs that a lot of our immigrants and illegals, if you to call them that, fill those jobs. That is a reality. We do also have some people who are illegal who, in fact, are criminals. I think one side overplays how many of that is, but if we were having a sensible conversation, it would look like talking about how this previous administration, the borders were wide open. We allowed way too many, more than we ever have, come into the country. Like, you should be able to talk about that from a realistic standpoint, right? Like, we had a problem. So correcting that problem was necessary, but in being necessary, it should be immediate deportation of those who actually are in criminal acts. I don't think it should include showing up at workplaces, because those that when we try to make a blanket statement about those who are illegal being criminals, when we try to make that blanket statement, then they get to show up at workplaces. But I think a politician being reasonable would not include ICE showing up at workspaces, but getting rid of people who are causing problems and actually creating tax issues because they're not actually adding to the economy in a legal way, is something that needs to be done. I don't know that we can say that publicly, that a politician can say that publicly and get an applause because people have been pitted on both ends of it. Your thoughts, Leo?
Well, as I listen to all of this, I think it's always important to remind everyone that we are in a place of political dissolution, disillusion and dissolution. So in other words, things are tore up from the floor right now. So to try and make sense out of nonsense, it's very difficult to do. So I want to take us back to some progenitors of where we are. And that is the whole idea that is America America's. So we got to understand that. And there was a big fight about that. And it was even modern and recent when there were strong leftist movement within the Democratic Party who said and openly campaigned that we needed to have open borders and that all people who were here illegally, meaning that they were not in a naturalization process, they were not documented as people trying to immigrate to America, all those people had broken the law. What the left being pushed by the extreme left and the right being pushed by center right to extreme right, what they are having an argument is to whether or not undocumented immigrants are actually breaking the law just by being here. So there's a plurality of Americans who agree, yes, mostly on the conservative side. Most of them voted for Trump, and that's why he won an election, because he completely campaigned that I'm going to shut this illegal immigration stuff down. And as you were describing, Montoya, that he said, I am going to be your retribution on the fact that Biden and the Democrats didn't do anything about it, and and even the Republicans hadn't done anything about it. So Trump is like, I'm going to go and I'm going to throw an axe on this thing. Do people in a plurality believe that it should be done? Something should be done to level set this, to think about the cost to American citizens and taxpayers for anything from medical care to going to school? Yes, that conversation needs to be had. Do we like, as a conservative, do I like how Trump is doing it? No, I don't like how he's doing it. So now you got a black mayor. He's not a black mayor. He's the mayor of Chicago.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not real. Guys, what is the percentage of black people in Chicago?
38%.
Is it 6%? It's probably 30% like Georgia and Atlanta, right?
38%. 38%.
So in other words, there is some people, like me even, going, this ain't a black issue. Why are you fighting so hard for these illegal immigrants? Why are black people going out there and getting themselves arrested for something that really isn't really about black Americans? Well, he has to say what he's saying because he really is the mayor for some Latinos who are there too and some other folks who are there. So that is true. But the question remains, should he be stopping the federal government for doing something that thus far has been considered constitutional? That's a question.
Emil, that's a great question. I'll let you answer it as well. Let me throw in a couple things before you go, Emil. So the thing is, I stand with Leo in the sense that because I still recall going into this election, for example, I think we played the clip on Politically Conscious where Charlemagne the God took the call where the guy was saying, hey, we're having trouble up here in New York getting these services, and I'm watching, these people get the services that I can't get. And again, we're weeding through the propaganda. I'm not trying to put it in the either or. But the reality is, in removing those who are getting some of those services, I've heard some people from Chicago say the same things. We can't be devoid that right now. That actually is that campaign promise. Like to Leo's point, I don't think any of us like how it's being done. But that campaign promise from Trump, there are African Americans who say, "Hey, we're benefiting not to have to compete with people who should not be here." That's a fair thought, I think, for African Americans. I still don't know how this issue is an African American issue. That's my thoughts. Your thoughts, Emil.
So first of all, I'm always going to go back to history. So let's go back to the 1930s, 1929 to 1939. There was something called Mexican repatriation, where America very deliberately sent home about 2 to 3 million Mexicans. Some went voluntarily, some were rounded up in very similar ways to what you see today. And then 20 years later, it happened under President Eisenhower, where it was called Operation Wetback, and I'm sorry for using that term, but that's the official name of what happened. And another 1 million to 1.5 million Mexicans were sent back to Mexico. And why am I saying this? Because 50 years, 60 years hence, we are still in the same boat. Biden didn't open the border. The border's been open since Texas was taken from Mexico during the war. Remember the Alamo and all that. So we're not talking about something brand new. California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas were all part of Mexico at one point. And the people who were there, some artificial line did not stop them from moving back and forth between their families and job opportunities. But if we're also going to talk about that, let's talk about this. Nobody comes to America and brings a job with them. They come to America because somebody pays them to do the work. If you're going to prosecute the people doing the work, prosecute the people who pay them to do the work. It goes both ways. Supply side economics says there is a supply of people who are going to do the work. There's a demand side economic argument that says there are people paying for that work. If you don't address both sides of this, then you have no argument, and what you're really doing is playing propaganda. So let's be very comfortable with history, knowing that we've sent Mexicans specifically, but not exclusively, back across the border. But that's not the reality we're living in. The reality we're living in is that this economy is built on wages below minimum wage. This economy is built on people who are willing to do those jobs and people who are willing to pay those damn near slave wages. So if we're going to have that argument, let's have it, which depresses the entire economy for labor. By the way, if we're going to talk about all of that labor, you've heard me say this before, Montoya and Leo, that automation was retarded under those low wages because that is a control mechanism for those people. So we're not going to just talk about this stuff without a historical reference and without the understanding that there are people on both sides of the aisle who are ignoring that farmers in Iowa, as well as nannies being hired in New York and California, as well as other people who are cooking and cleaning in all across this nation, are being paid under the table, and that those people who are paying are not under any threat to be prosecuted for violating that law, as well as for the illegal immigrants who are here doing the work.
I've heard of some of those companies.
Can I ask Emil a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Montoya.
No, go ahead.
So, Emil, let's play it forward. Let's play it forward, Emil. So let's imagine that the Republicans are successful at shutting down the border, and they're successful at creating an inhospitable environment where people crossing the southern border will say, we're not going to. Some argue that that's what's happened, that the border is having the fewest crossings in,
history.
Since the Mexican Revolution. I'm not arguing that. I can't argue against that. It seems to me that that is really happening. If I were trying to cross from the southern border and I'm looking at what's happening in America, I'm asking myself, do I want to go to America? Right? So let's play it forward and say that Trump and the government, the large engine, as Larry Barnes has commented, let's say that large engine has decided we need that, what you called almost slave labor. You talked about the low labor, the low wages these people are using. But let's say that we get rid of them. They're gone. Mill, just answer this question. Who's going to be the people willing to do the low wage work to keep the engine going? Who are they?
Nobody. That's why they're here. That's the whole.
You believe that the engine? Wait a minute. Hold on. You gave your answer. You said nobody's going to do the work. You think that capitalism and that engine is just going to sit back and say, "Well, I'm not going to move because nobody's doing the work."
They will import. They will import illegally, Leo. That's what's been happening. There's a systematic importation of labor into this country because of what.
So I hear you. Okay.
And let me.
So no, I wanted your answer on what was going to happen. So they will have somebody. You just corrected yourself. You said they will continue to do the illegal immigration process.
Sure, they'll go through the northern border, which is damn near unsecurable because it's so broad. But the point I'm trying to make is that until you decide as a nation, we decide as a nation that the demand side is just as critical as the supply side, you will always have supply to feed that demand. Always.
And let me say this, Leo, because again, I still don't think this is a black issue. I'll say that loud and clear. But what I will say though, to what you're saying, Bill, Like the reason we're even, and tell me if I'm wrong, y'all both are more into politics than me, but when I'm sitting here watching what's happening, the reason we're even considering subsidizing the farmers is because of Emil's point. I'm just talking about, I'm not on the left or right side of this. I'm just talking about me just with my logical mind. The reason we're even talking about subsidizing the farmers is because they've lost the people to do their work. They're losing so many crops because they don't have enough workers, because Americans no longer are willing to do those jobs. They don't pay enough for an American to do it. Like, that's the reality of it. And so the reason our government is having to turn around and now consider, Trump saying it, subsidize the things that they're against the most is because of the policy. Go ahead, Leo.
So in other words, what you're saying is capitalism in America will respond.
Absolutely.
And the way that it looks like it's going to respond right now is that, in fact, by getting rid of these illegal immigrants who are taking jobs at low sub wages that are not sustainable for living, right? We're actually going to force our government to be more honest about the role of government in creating a certain level of quality of life will require some subsidy. The reason why we haven't been able to have this conversation in the past is because people want to socialism. And then we get all caught up thinking socialism means communism. So where we are now and is in this metamorphosis right now, actually because of the willingness to bring the hatchet down.
I see what you're saying.
Because of that, Emil, because we're willing to have this fight right now on illegal immigration, you're actually going to push the possibility for America to be more humane in its capitalism.
You know, I would almost agree with you, except that the president himself said, oh, there's a certain subset of these illegal immigrants who are fine. They're okay. They've been here for decades and they're doing good work. They're on farms. They're in hotels. You have hotels paying the same workers who are Americans less money or more money than the people who are working illegally. So you can't really discriminate the way you just did. I would love for all of us to rise. I would love for business to see itself as an engine of humane treatment, but it's not. The bottom line is the bottom line. Most businesses in America, especially most big businesses in America today, Fortune 1000 companies, are much more in their Milton Friedman bag than they are in their Keynesian bag. And I'll say it that way. You guys who are studying and want to know a little bit more about economics, study Milton Friedman and study Robert Keynes, Keynes. Friedman and Keynes are two different camps of economics. And I'm telling you right now, Leo, that until we have a demand side conversation about this very issue, the rest of it is irrelevant to me, because the demand side issue.
We are having the conversation. We are having. See, that's it.
We're having the conversation right now. People who are hiring illegals right now.
Yeah,
that says we are.
No, that's actually being done for the first time.
I don't see it. I don't see all these farmers getting prosecuted. I don't see all these hoteliers getting prosecuted.
Well, right now you're looking for it in the streams. Yeah, it's actually I'm gonna call it like it is.
It's actually happening.
That is actually happening for the first time in my lifetime, Emil. It is absolutely happening.
You know what?
Let me go to another. We lose a lot of time. Let me get this one clip right here.
I see a whole lot of people talking about the political world and different stuff like this, and I just want to say, and this ain't a political video, but I do just want to say this. I don't see what it is. Like, is it because y'all live in blue states that is that bad? Because y'all sitting on here talking about, oh, these last 8 months just been hell, blah, blah, blah. My life has not changed at all in these last 8 months. I ain't lost no rights. I just filled up my truck a couple days ago for $2.49 a gallon. I just went and got a bunch of groceries for the house the other day. That was like $90. Like, bro, my life has not, like, nothing bad has happened in my life. And so that's what I'm wondering. Is it more of like the blue states that this type of stuff is going on in? And maybe does it got something to do with the policies going on in these liberal democratic states? Like, even the school my son goes to, bruh, whenever his mom drops him off every morning, there is an armed police officer at every single building where them kids go that stay there on duty all day long, bruh. You see what I'm saying? Like, dude, it's a different world living in like a more southern red state and living in them blue states. And I think that's got a lot to do with it, bro. I think people that live in blue states, I just don't think, I don't know what it is, bro, but I just know that. And I'm not saying everything Donald Trump did just the best, and I'm just saying, bro, it dang sure ain't nothing like y'all trying to make it seem. Y'all trying to make it seem like this has just been the end of the world these last 8 months, bro. Nothing in my life has changed at all. And so that's really what I'm trying to figure out. What is so bad about what states y'all are living in? Or is this more just the stuff y'all making up in y'all head, bro? That like, are y'all coming up with stuff that you think is bad just because you don't like Donald Trump, and so you saying it's bad when in reality it's like, nigga,
That's what it is. They don't like Trump, and so even though he's doing things that actually benefit them, like removing illegal migrants out of apartments that have been hidden and taken over inside of Chicago, even though the people have been calling about this for a long time, and he's actually in the hood doing the things that's best for the people, like stopping the murders and finding children over in Memphis and all of the guns that's being removed from the street and keeping DC safe. And so primarily in communities that are blue or liberal, because one thing that he's saying that also is applicable to communities that are in blue states. So I'll give you an example. If you go over to California, a lot of California, if not most geographically, actually voted for Trump. It was red. But it's in the most liberal spaces like Los Angeles that it actually voted blue. So they're experiencing, the people that are in these rural communities, the similar piece that you're experiencing, while at the same time he's doing the things that he promises. And so it's always promises made, promises kept. But only thing that I can think of that I can see people that are, changing is that they actually making your community safer.
So I'm gonna start with you, Emil. And the reason I played that clip is because as we're encouraging our watchers to be engaged, politically engaged, I think that young man's life is a very his relative experience. I'll say, even in doing this show, for me, based on my personal situation, there's not much changed in my life. And so the thing that I think sometimes get lost, in my opinion, when it comes to political conversations in America, we lose the context of, one, how large our country is. And the reason that matters when it comes to these conversations is, generally speaking, this area, anywhere anywhere else in the world, would be 4 to 10 countries, the same amount of area anywhere else in the world. And the reason that would matter is because some issues based on the demographics, some issues based on the geography don't even apply. So where this young man lives, he hasn't seen any changes. And so he's saying, I don't know what people are complaining about. That's his reality based on where he lives. I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm just highlighting that sometimes when there's either or conversations, sometimes, to Leo's point earlier, that we get caught up on conversations sometimes that are not yours. And so when it comes to politics, which I always say should equal personal interest, politics equals personal interest, to be a more conscious audience, you have to learn to pay attention to what matters to you. And sometimes that's not going to be on the side you think it is. But if you just get caught up by every issue, your side, and I listen to both sides of the radio. If I listen to radio right now on either side, the sky is falling, Emil. And I'm like that, brother. The sky's not falling for him, and the sky's not falling for me. Go ahead, Emil.
My grocery bill went up since January. The availability of certain things has gone down since January. Tariffs have eaten up so many jobs since January. The policies that are affecting people right now, 360,000 plus Black women have been fired from federal and other.
Yeah, you better not bring that number on here.
I'm going to bring it up, even though it's not 100% true. And I talked about black men too. You know I talked about black men.
You just pulled some propaganda out.
I know I did.
Hey, let me say this, Emil. Now, I'm cutting you off because you just went propaganda on us, and you can't be on here bringing propaganda to the face when we actually clarify. We both agreed on a show that the 300,000 number was being used in a propagandized way.
I know.
So you can't now turn around and use it. I'm not mad if your voices went up. but that young man's groceries didn't go up. So don't argue with, if your
let
reality
me
is
say
your
the facts.
groceries went
Let me
up,
say the facts.
speak to your reality. You can't
Let me
tell
say
that
the
young
facts
man
then.
his sky's falling if he says he ain't got no bread.
TJ, hold on now. Okay, I agree. TJ Maxx is restructuring under Forever 21 just went under. Places that people go for bargains are going under. A company called At Home, which you're supposed to get low cost stuff, going under. These are all companies that are bellwethers for an economy that's beginning to see some significant turbulence that wasn't there in December. You're seeing a bunch of problems starting to indicate. Do I think politics is personal? Yes, it is, until it's not. And the things that you say, I'm going to vote for these things that are in my best interest, if you don't pay attention to the broader story, you run the risk of having those broader stories affect your day-to-day. So if gas was $5 a gallon, then he'd be concerned that things were different or bad or worse. What I'm saying is, if you are strictly looking at the measure of merit as my life hasn't changed, you're missing the point that there possibly is a violation of the Constitution under going on in Portland and Chicago. You're missing the fact that those violations of the Constitution may come home to you. You're missing the fact that there may be other things that are happening, like a deal in Qatar that recognizes potentially that there's corruption in the federal government to a degree we've never seen before. And all of that will bleed down into your life at some point. You got to stop the train early, because once it gains momentum, it'll run you over without care or consideration. And I know some of the things that Leo and I talk about, you will always see corruption. You will always see that train coming to run the people over. The difference is in degree right now. And I'm not willing to let someone say my life hasn't changed being the bellwether or the measure of merit for whether or not America is fighting an existential fight right now.
So what I'll challenge you, and I'll let Leo jump in on this thought. So where I would challenge you, Emil, in my opinion, again, if we're going to raise the consciousness of those who listen. So it's not that I disagree with a lot of what you said, but here's where the nuance, in my opinion, being fair to the voter. If we're going to say, look, get a little more engaged, then I think we have to, in my opinion, meet people where they are. So because you are politically astute, then I am glad that you're out here saying, let me pay attention to this larger, broader issue because you're politically astute. I am saying to someone like that young man, his personal issue, wherever it relates to in his life, that's where he should start paying attention to politics. Because keep in mind, we always talk about that 1/3 of the country who doesn't pay attention to politics at all. The risk of the division that we experience right now is that 1/3 grows, not those of us paying attention. The risk for our country, of us having control of our country, is more people becoming basically, I don't have anything to do with it. And now we allow a smaller group to control it. So I would challenge what you're saying is, I don't have an expectation for somebody who doesn't have the capacity to know politics to the degree that you know, Emil. I would
just ask you, brother, why are there armed police at his school? If that doesn't tell us a whole bunch about where our nation is and where it's headed, I don't know what does. Because I've lived around the world, and I've not seen armed police in any other nation but this one. So to have this discussion, we have to at least ask some really hard questions of the brother in the moment. Why are there police right there?
And so his answer to you, and I'm gonna go to Leo right after this. So his answer to you is he's glad to have the armed policeman there from his perspective. So I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I'm just telling you that doesn't alarm him, being based on his mindset. Based on his mindset, he's pointed out as a value to him. You don't have to agree with it, but he doesn't look at it the way you look at it. Go ahead, Leo.
So because I'm a conservative, I tend to just be concrete, sequential, and I tend not to use the word should a lot. And I get it. A lot of people on the right and the left have sort of a moral value standard that they're trying to say people ought to be acting like this. Mm-hmm. We ought not to have an armed police officer at a school. But then there's the practical conservative kind of thinking that says, well, we probably ought not to, but it's wise and reasonable to do so right now because we got a mental health problem. because we've got something happening across the nation that's problematic, that is trending, and just jumping on to these actions. And so, or it could be that his school did it just because his parents asked for it. The parents at that school said, we want a sense of security, and that's how we want to see it. So it could be a number of reasons why they've done it, but they've taken action. And so what this starts out with, just what I started out at the beginning of this, is that I started talking about how can we move towards more self-agency. And so I want to say that Emil is right to be concerned. He's part of a talented 10th that should be doing all the constitutional work, the legal fights, You should be doing that. But you should not deny that guy's lived reality, that he might have a way of living that's less dependent on the work you're doing. And that's a good thing, because he might be the farm and the house in the Southern community that we run to when all the white power structures kick us out of the city.
See, I know that's theoretically that's nice, but if he's going to the grocery store spending $90, then that's not true. If he's going to the gas station spending $2.49,
but he can grow his own food. I get he's closer to growing his own food than the person who depends on the grocery store.
If he's spending money, if he's spending money on groceries, he's at the grocery
store.
Don't
argue with that man's lived reality, Emil.
But I'm not denying his lived reality. What I'm saying is, let me argue it slightly differently.
We're not extra innings right now, so I got to be respectful.
When Benito Mussolini took over, the trains ran on time and everybody was happy. And then a few years later, the Italian economy was in the toilet and everybody was mad at him. What I'm going to tell you is, just because things look okay today doesn't mean you should be like, well, what's wrong? Because that is a very myopic way of seeing the world, very nearsighted. And I'm not telling Leo he's wrong. I think we should be more self-sufficient. I admitted to that, and I'm actually working on it myself right now. But that's not my point. My point is that to measure as merit your personal engagement with the economy or your reality limits your ability to see the train that's coming that might run you over. And to all of our points, to your point especially, right now, people are more engaged, not less engaged, than they've been in a very long time. People are beginning to wake up to the fact that they need to start paying attention to this stuff. I hope that it bleeds over into the midterm elections next year, and I hope it bleeds over into the presidential election of 2028. But there is a fundamental misread of reality if all you're basing your logic on is, oh, my personal life is all that matters and that's all I can see. Because it will ignore what will come one day. It's like saying, well, it's sunny today, I don't need to put a board on my windows, even though I know a hurricane is right around the corner.
So I still would challenge that those of us who think we're politically astute to whatever level, and you all both are more politically astute than I ever will be. So credit to y'all in that sense. But I think what you're saying, Emil, is, to me, exactly why propaganda in politics exists. It's propaganda to say, hey, let me tell you what's wrong. And right now we got a bunch of people telling both sides. When I listen to radio from the conservative side or when I listen to radio from the liberal side, I absolutely can, because of just the pure logic of how those things are put together, I actually understand why both sides see the America the way they see America. And the reason I'm highlighting that in you pushing against this guy's reality is that's literally what the propaganda of both sides tries to do. He's going, I'm not talking about that he's right in how he sees the problems, but my concern is that the political class is going to run and tell him there's an issue. That's what propaganda is to me. I don't want to be part of the propaganda. I want to just say to him, okay, what issues concern you? And to me, it sounds like I said, using the gun, because you use that example, he's actually happy about the armed guard. So I have to respect his personal position on that. While to Leo's point, I would love to not have armed guards at schools like a lot of countries. But I'm also, to Leo's point, we're in the reality of we have the most citizens with the most guns in the entire world. Like there's no country that has the amount of guns anywhere close to what we have. So that is a reality.
That mental health crisis nationwide, and there should be armed
So
guards.
I'm just saying both of those go together, and I'm not simply saying I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying I respect. I don't think we should be able to tell him what he should think. Go ahead, Leo.
But we should, but at the same time, so I know I don't want to sound like I'm trying to straddle the fence here, but like I said, it's important that Emil do the work that he's doing.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's important to work for those who have less, for those who can't advocate for themselves, for those who have found themselves in a situation where depending on that large engine is 100% of their sustenance. There are people who, depending on that large engine, is 100% of their sustenance. So the fear of that large engine failing, we have to fight for a civil and resilient democratic republic. Because if that republic fails, how am I going to live? There are people who would fall apart if that democratic republic totally fell apart. And there are people whose life might not actually be all that impacted.
So
yeah,
Leo,
I would
I'm jumping in real quick. I'm jumping in real quick, Leo, because I would love you to couch. Because here's to me what the real reality is. I'm not worried about the 100%, believe it or not. I think we don't have a 100%. I don't think we have an honest conversation about that democratic republic, even if you only need it at 30%. I don't think we have enough realistic conversation around.
Well, and here's where I was going, Montoya. I agree. That discussion needs to happen. I would love for us to have more of this discussion, because this is more. We've been very practical and pragmatic in talking about politics and the machinations and legislation and all that. But this is a more philosophical, theoretical, strategic vision that we need to have a discussion about. This is what is a revolution, and does it happen within or does it happen without? How is it done? Is it done through violence? Is it done through strategy? Is it done through resource sharing? These conversations need to happen. So here's a practical thing. And I know for a fact that if I were in Virginia with Emil, there would be some events that I would go to that Emil is working on that would show a reality that would be something that I'm not accustomed to. That would be something that I say, wow, these people are living like this. And it would expand my vision on how I might have impact. And just by being with Emil, I might be able to help him do that good work. Montoya attended an event with me last week in the Black area of Atlanta, right next to Carver High School, in a building that had the last name Ali on it, owned by Black people, that had a coffee shop in it called Black Coffee, owned by Black people, that had steel fabrication going on in the back, a steel fabrication company owned by Black people. So Emil, yes, it's hard for me. And they were mostly Democrats, these people, okay? And we were helping to make sure the Atlanta public school system has some resilience and might see its way out of third grade reading level, debauchery. The point that I'm making is that was a really inspiring visit that we had. When you're in that environment, it's hard to believe that you need to say, oh my, the sky's falling down. So it's not just that young man's experience that was singularly anecdotal, but just the whole experience that you can have by looking at Black resilience that you talked about. We have done A to B. Well, that was an example. Carver, that down there, Black people living, prospering. We're doing it even though we scream that the government doesn't care about us, they're stopping us, and they're we're still freaking doing it with poorly educated kids, by the way.
Yeah, that's the reality. I'm gonna hit y'all with one last clip to respect y'all time.
You should.
Yeah, here's the last clip for y'all to respond to it. I'll get y'all out of here because we definitely overtime today. I'm gonna skip to this one again, just challenging the thought. So good stuff, y'all.
Headline in your paper today, top story, most voters say U.S. can't repair severe divisions. And they went into the fact that 5 years ago, even during the pandemic and during the George Floyd protests, even then people thought, well, we are going to get through this. And now they seem to be on the page of, it's not going to happen. What do we do? But did you see the story?
Yeah, and I think what's new about this moment, one of my teachers and friends, Doug Seidman, likes to say this, We aren't divided. We are being divided. That's right. By companies for profit. Okay, and we have our divisions. We always have. But it is now a giant. What is new in my life is it is now a giant industry to make people stupid and angry. And I'm not sure what happens.
Talking about algorithms,
right? Exactly, and Facebook and all the things that these people do. And we'd be. You know, the way I look at the world right now, we're going through a lot of social change. We're going through a lot of technological change. The pot would be boiling. But then along came Mark Zuckerberg and he turned the heat up on the pot. And then along came Trump and he took the lid off the pot. And he made it permissible, popular, and profitable to say and do things to and about each other we never did before. And all three of those things need to be addressed.
Leo, any thoughts to that? And we'll get out of here.
Well, he's not wrong. Yeah, he's not wrong. We've talked about that in this show before, that there is a political system that makes money off of division, off of the grift, and the algorithm coming along has made that even more of an attractive nuisance. There is a perverse incentive happening. And so I mentioned on your show that I'm working on proposing legislation to counteract those perverse incentives. We know that we need to do something to make technology billionaires accountable for that perverse incentive, encouraging people to be divisive and making money from being divisive. I myself choose not to, as a political consultant, contribute to making money for myself by putting fear and anger in people. I could be a millionaire if I took that tactic, you know? And so, but there's a lot of people on both the left and the right who make money from that. And we all need to be held accountable, and we need to have that discussion on how can we legislate in a way that is perverse incentive. You've heard me say on here, I think political advertising should have a sin tax.
Oh, I love it. Here's the reality, in my opinion. Emil, you can close us out with this. I don't think we recognize that cut on Bill Maher, the guy that was, I don't know his name, but what he was saying, I don't think we in the mirror realize how much we're responsible for. We simply lay it at the feet of those doing it to us, but we're unaware of, almost back to what you were talking about earlier, Emil, the demand and supply of it. We're unaware that we are more susceptible to the rhetoric, to the propaganda. Therefore, if I'm in office as a senator or as a congressman or even locally, if I am in office, I may have a very reasonable approach. But if I say the reasonable approach publicly, if you're caught up in a side, you will miss the reasonable approach and think that it's an attack. And now we're only leaning into the rhetoric, into the propaganda. So therefore, we as citizens are even forcing some of our new people that get into politics. We force them to a side because we want their heads if they come in with reasonable solutions and says, okay, this extreme doesn't work for the American people. But here's where, in my opinion, we might not have the 6 days shutdown if people were willing to be more reasonable. But if you're not playing into the rhetoric every time you get on the mic publicly as a congressperson, if you don't look like, for example, here's my last question to you, Emil, and I'll let you go, is we've talked about on this show, between the two of you, we need two sides that are reputable, two sides that are willing to go against each other. Is what we're seeing right now in the 6 days, the Democrats simply just standing up to say that they stood up because of how it looks politically? Because we've talked about that. And if that's the case, it's just a political move. Are they making the move for us, the people? That's my question. I'm sincerely asking. I'm not insinuating one way or the other, but I want to know what's your answer to that, Emil.
So, Montoya, I'm always going to go back to history. The Fairness Doctrine was pretty much canceled in 1986 during the Reagan administration, and that is where you saw AM radio go crazy. AM radio begat Fox News. Fox News begat algorithms, where rage became a product.
Right.
So now we're here where rage is a product and both sides are using it. The algorithm does not discriminate Republican versus Democrat because the money is made on rage. So the question we need to answer is, how do we get away from it? I got away from it personally. I don't watch mainstream media. I don't use Facebook. And when I do use it, it's for strictly business purposes because that is the media through which I can do my business best. Otherwise, I stay away from all of those sources of rage-inducing propaganda. And that's the answer to your question that I want to give you, which is you got to be willing to acknowledge that there's a vested interest in corporate, political, and social circles that keep you and me on the edge of being so pissed off we want to do something about it. And the problem is to do something about it has very limited choices because we are propagandized into one side or another on the extremes of those. So now you have political violence on one side, and then you have nonviolent protests on the other side with no policy mechanism, with no economic input, significant economic input. You don't even think about a genetic strike in this country as a tool because rage is the product by which we are measuring ourselves because of these forces in all of these different circles that are making so much money and gaining so much power because they're not willing to acquiesce one bit to the will of the people when the will of the people is informed and intelligent. So they don't want you informed. They don't want you intelligent. They don't want you asking wise questions. And to your point about a reasonable, appropriate answer to some of these very challenging issues, they don't want you to find common ground because common ground dissipates all the power they've been accumulating over the past 40 years.
So if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. We'll see y'all next week. Great show, guys. Now, y'all stay on in the back, and I'll get y'all off the show. Oh, actually, matter of fact, before I play the outro, if you are in Atlanta, let me actually play this real quick, and then I'll talk to you guys in a second. But if you're in Atlanta, we do have the smartest event in the city every third Friday, so I definitely wanted to play just a little promo for that as well.
Now, it's not uncommon that my level of honesty will leave some of you uncomfortable. I mean, even my closest confidants would typically tell me, Tommy, it's not that we don't like what you say, we just hate how you say it. See, it's like you just always assume you the smartest dude in the room, too conceited to ever consider or concede to anyone else's point of view. And that's probably true. Cause see, honestly, I am an asshole who also happens to be brilliant. And it's not that I don't want to.
Smartest event in the city every third Friday. If you're in Atlanta, mentaldialogue.com, the smartest networking event in the city. So come out to our Intellectual Olympics. See y'all next week.